Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a conversation between me and Simon from the Rifleman Moore channel. We did like a Skype call. We went over a few things regarding the hobby and certain aspects of that. So yeah, hope you enjoy.
We got.
I think we're. Oh, I think.
Yeah,
wonderful. Okay. Okay. Just want to sort of start. So we've got probably people on my channel obviously know mostly who you are. So
yeah. Well, likewise, I think a few people have come over from mine when I've given you shout outs.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
No worries. But,
so first thing I want to sort of go really about sort of roughly around what's happening now. So like Corona and the hobby really.
Yeah, it's been difficult. I mean, obviously we should have had. Obviously, we've met up previously at Hat Green. We should have had Hat Green this spring. There's supposed to be another one in the autumn. I mean, it's getting more and more questionable whether that's going to happen. I mean, I've not seen anything official from them, but things like Victory Show and stuff as well. It's even stuff back into September. You're thinking, are they going to have to, because they don't know what the situation will be.
Exactly. Yeah, I think there's a bit of worry of a second wave. I think still in the air.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to comment on any of that stuff, obviously, because it's not my area of expertise.
Yeah,
I did up to AS level biology, so I'm an area virology is not an area I can comment on. But I would say, obviously, I think people are probably going to play it safe in terms of events.
Yeah, definitely.
Because of the costs involved and the see Hat Green, I think because it's in house, they could keep that perhaps on the cards for a bit longer before they had to make a decision. But things like Victory Show, I don't know if War and Peace is still on the cards.
They're still. They put up a notification yesterday. I think it was yesterday before about keeping wary. They're still constantly reviewing it. Going ahead because they're at the end of July, aren't they? So
yes. So I don't know. As I say, I think it depends on the particular show. It's been difficult though, because obviously it's a major part of my life, the hobby, and not being able to go to events has been a big thing. I mean, we've missed a couple now.
Our show was last weekend. Also, this weekend just gone, I think. This weekend just gone. So that was a bit of a. That's normally for me and some of the other people in the group. That's the first proper event of the year.
Yeah.
And I sort of consider Hat Green sort of first event for me personally. So that was a miss. So hopefully September one goes ahead.
Yeah, fingers crossed. By then there'll be opportunity to have events more along that line, particularly if they're outdoors. I don't know. We'll see. We'll just have to wait and see with that. But it is a shame. But it's everyone's had to make. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Hope it sort of settles itself out a bit more.
Absolutely. Yes.
Quickly, hopefully.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm liking the look of your kit room in the background. Just to completely go off on a different tangent there, it's looking very neat and tidy.
Thank you. So, try to arrange it nicely.
Yeah, it's nice. It's the whole thing of having a collection is there's no point in having a collection if it's just in boxes in a lot.
Exactly,
I mean, a lot of my stuff is because of a lack of space, but as you'll have seen with the cabinet and stuff, I try and change what's on, and the mannequins, change what's on display to make it keep it interesting. There's no point collecting if you're not going to be able to look at what you've got.
Exactly. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's the same sort of attitude I find with shows as well. I find frustrating. Like you asked, like especially when I've been with certain groups, they're like, oh yeah, bring this. So, okay, and then it sits in a tent for the whole weekend because no, we don't want to do that now. So okay, well, why did you ask me to bring it?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I put a lot of time and effort into this, like really put a lot of focus into it. They're like, oh no, we don't do this. Oh, okay, fine.
That's how it goes. Unfortunately, yes. It's particularly well if you're travelling, by coach or train, and that can be quite frustrating. I'd imagine. Thankfully, my days of doing that are gone. Now I have a car. Well, we've had a car for a little while now, but first couple of years of reenacting, when I was still at uni, everything was done by train, and the weight of kit we used to lug on public transport was ridiculous. Because you're not only carrying the soldiers' individual kit, you're carrying, probably you're carrying an over-egged amount of sleeping gear, so a camp bed and a kit mat and a sleeping bag,
Yeah.
because you're an idiot. Whereas you could make do with the sleeping mat and the sleeping bag. But that was just what I did. I say when I say you're an idiot, I mean hypothetically I'm an idiot. I'm not calling you an idiot. But I because at the time you're not thinking correctly in terms of packing and so forth.
Yeah.
Such is the way of the student.
I thought I'd sort of got out that phase like fairly recently, but like even with Hat Green like last year, the one in September.
Yes.
Because I'm traveling by transport. Because I went to the one in April originally. I went with down with a couple of guys with the group originally in that one.
Got 40s.
Yeah. No, we're East meets West.
Oh, East meets West. Yes, of course. Sorry. Yes.
But yeah, in April, obviously, I was probably the only member who went down, and I went down by public transport. And it's because when Jay was still there, he was like, "Oh yeah, we'll you want to do this, and then we'll do Northern Ireland as well." I was like, "Okay." So I took the right gear down,
body armor, and everything.
It's like, oh my god! I wish I'd still kept the thing because I originally had I've got my body armor, but it's a really liner in it as well. But sometimes I used to swap out the liner for bubble wrap, so it keeps it light, but it keeps shape, so like the clothes and that. Yeah. But I haven't done that, so it was all in with the helmet, etc. I was like, oh, it's gonna be fun. So I think
the only time I've done it when it's been comfortable was a trip to the Great Central Railway, where I travelled in kit and I wore marching order. And the only thing I did was I replaced the greatcoat in the pack with the sleeping bag.
Oh, okay.
Modern sleeping bag, because we weren't period camping.
Yeah.
We weren't doing an event like that, and that was actually really good. I got a few funny looks just in full Second War. Well, it was early, so we were doing 1939 outbreak of hostilities. So I was in service dress puttees, but 1939 and web equipment, and with the rifle and a
service dress.
Sorry.
Is it 1922 service dress?
Well, yeah, that's kind of collectorism, but yeah, it's a modification of the 1902 service dress. I mean, I suppose each pattern on from there, the service dress in its initial, that goes through quite a lot of changes in a short time. The lining style of the service dress, that's colloquially known as 1922 pattern, was first introduced, I think, in 1918.
Okay, yeah.
The collar lining, I think we've nailed this down to 1940 with the introduction of the 1940 pattern battle dress, which is obviously similar to the battle dress serge.
Yeah, because they had the lining,
concealed buttons, and it seems to be that the service dress gained its line collar at that period as well. So technically for 1939 it was wrong, but the only service dress I have at the present is those. They're actually 60s dated service dress jackets. I am planning eventually to get a nice set of reproduction Great War appropriate service dress, which will be better because it doesn't have the line collar and everything, but externally they're very similar. You're missing darts and various other things, cut slightly different in terms of how close it fits to the body, but it's original serge and it looks good. It's not not that far off, so I'm happy with that compromise for the minute. But that's what I was wearing anyway, just to get back to that. And very nice, the lady in the Virgin Rail well, you don't call it the buffet car now, do you? But anyway, who does all the teas and everything from the little... she gave me a free cup of tea, which is very nice of her. She asked what I was doing. I said we were going down to an event at the Great Central Railway, and obviously we're doing it. It's for their 40s weekend. And she said, oh, what a brilliant thing, and travelling in kit and everything. Have a cup of tea. So that was nice.
Actually, that's sort of similar to when I went to... Watercress Line, the War on the Line.
Yes, I'd love to go to the Watercress Line, actually.
It's a really, really lovely one.
Very picturesque.
There's Bluebell Line as well, which is in Sussex. Sussex? Yeah. That's quite a good one. But yeah, went to Watercress Line. I couldn't get really lift up there, so I had to go because I can travel from where I am, well, when I was living at my mum's, up from Ashfield to Alton, because obviously the line starts at Alton for Watercress Line. So I could travel there. So I went in full sort of officers.
Excellent. No, that's good.
It was because the thing is because I belt on pistol holster, etc. And I was like, I haven't got anything to carry it in, and I've got a pistol. Oh god, on public transport. So I was like, okay, what have I got? I've got my greatcoat. It's warm. Okay, it was really weird decision because I was very, very warm. But no, people on there were absolutely lovely. They were sort of asking questions. I was like, yeah, I'm just going. I was like, oh, that's really nice. I got in a good conversation with the conductor as well about it.
Yeah,
It was quite lovely. Yeah.
no, it's some. There's certainly been some adventures, I think, in acting terms. Going long distances on public transport with old kit is always quite interesting. But yeah, it's as you say, it's an interesting old hobby. Anyway,
Definitely.
Certainly made easier by having your own transport. It means you can get more of a display to various places and put on something that's a bit more interesting. I think obviously Great Central was fine because we were just we were troops in transit, so there was a group of 6 of us, I think, all in early war service dress, as if travelling to rejoin our units was the idea, and that worked quite well. It turned a lot of heads because a lot of people were like, what, service dress, Second World War?
Yeah.
Don't know it was worn early in the war, of course, so it didn't last very long. But
I know, exactly. But it's a nice thing because it's nice to get those little niche bits out. I think.
Yeah. Well, it's very common. The vast bulk of troops who went to France in '39 were wearing service dress. The first people to get the BD were militia troops, basically. And TA, and still using the old equipment. So you see an interesting mix of 08 and battle dress and 1937 and service dress, which is interesting.
Yeah, because then you sort of see that weird, especially with equipment as well. You see that strange transition between like 1908 with sort of like 37 fittings as well. I think there's a few.
Yeah, there's a couple. They made basic pouches for the 08 equipment, which weren't used a lot from what we can tell from photographs, but they existed. And the idea of that, of course, is it means that though you're not equipping your troops with a full set of new equipment, they have a way of carrying Bren gun magazines.
Exactly. I think that's nice.
It's why the regular troops were priority for webbing, because obviously they had the Bren and they needed a way of carrying the ammunition for the Bren. And you can't do well. There's the Bren bandolier and things, but you can't do that with 08. It's what amuses me when you see chaps with Thompson submachine guns and Brens wearing 08 web equipment early in that sort of 1940 period, just after Dunkirk. And you think, in your pockets,
Everyone carries one. They will hand them out.
Yeah. But no, it is interesting. That period is quite interesting. I mean, I always think it gets neglected a bit as well. Although more people have done it in recent years. BEF has been more of interest to people. But I think because it is a period of setbacks, shall we say? That I think that it's been less popular from that point of view. Perhaps I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think you put out. I think you put out a few videos like there's this sort of tendency for most, especially with the British reenactor sort of area, is to do a lot of late war.
44. I mean, the thing is for that is late war, and I mean a lot of people, obviously the thing is as soon as we landed in Europe, obviously the Americans and Brits and Canadians, etc. As soon as that happened, obviously the war then actually didn't last all that long, if you think about it.
Exactly.
But and that big middle period, obviously there's a lot of fighting going on elsewhere, which kind of gets forgotten about. And I think that's fair. It's because it's what happened at the time. It was what happened close to home. It was just across the channel. It drew the public imagination. Obviously, we just had the VE Day commemorations. How many people are going to remember VJ Day? I don't think many will. I'm going to do a little bit about that when it comes up. But as I say, I think that it's understandable why the focus is there on that particular campaign, Normandy, the Low Countries, and fighting into Germany. I can understand why that is so looms large in the public mind because it's so close to home, and it is what kind of knocked the what was seen as the major antagonist out of the war. I think the Japanese.
Mine is like we're at the end of the day we're mostly going forward rather than going backwards.
And as I say, but yes, I think that's why. Although the problem is, I think at events, 40s events in particular, and it is. I think the term 40s events is kind of an issue to a degree as well. I don't want to sound. I'm not trying to sound snobbish or anything here.
No. I
romanticization, and what you see at 40s events now is more. Is very, very stylized version of. And it was a time of great austerity and so forth. And I am concerned that the genuine. I have nothing against people having a good time, going enjoying themselves, obviously. But when it spills over to displays and things that should be educational, and they're perhaps portraying a caricature rather than something that's typical, that's a little concerning. As I say, the dances and things and themed dances and so forth, of these things, I've tolerance for that. People got to go and enjoy themselves. It's not. It may not be exactly period, but okay, they're enjoying. But it's when it bleeds over into actual displays of which are supposed to be educational and so on. That's when I get more concerned with it. I say I'm a little bit concerned the way 40s events are getting more and more like that.
Yeah, I think people have this conception that, like, especially with the general public, that 39 to 45 was a constant street party.
I think and the the sort of the idea of the pin-ups and stuff. I mean, a lot of that stuff is actually more of a late 40s, 50s thing,
and especially American thing as well.
It's been somewhat transposed back onto the 40s. Yeah, and as has a lot of the 50s sort of look in terms of makeup and so forth. And when makeup and so forth for women became more available again, I think that's been the look has been transposed back somewhat for ladies who reenact to a degree, rather than the 30s look being brought forward, which is odd. They take the 50s back, which is strange. As I say, I'm not an expert on these things. It's just something I've noticed on occasion. I'm not an expert on that side of things at all, but it is something definitely that happens. You can see it. But there we go. As I say, people are going to enjoy themselves. I'm not. It's just something I've noticed, which irks me slightly when it's taken to the nth degree. But there we go.
I completely agree with you. To be honest with you, it's sort of similar to, like, I think you mentioned in one of your live streams about, like, especially like those local sort of 40s events, sort of like maybe like the 2-day ones, or especially like ones that like on railways as well. The Amazon style costume.
Oh yeah, you do very occasionally see people actually wearing fancy dress costumes. So you'll see they've made a good example is they've made for the Home Guard. They've made a Captain Mannering costume, which is a one-piece kind of battle dress looking green polyester thing.
Yeah,
and you see people wearing them in earnest at events, and I think it's not a fancy dress party. It's a reenacting event. Yeah, and that's the thing. But events where promenaders, just people are allowed to just rock up wearing kit, then that's going to be a thing. Things like Victory Show where you pay to get in. I mean, people can still wear what they want when they want to come, but the displays there are going to be of a certain quality because obviously the groups are somewhat known to the organisers and you have to book in and so forth. But where it's, say, Lytham, my local event, which is just on the green, anyone can wander along. People could, you can come along and you wear what you like. So you can't police it. It's just irksome when people do it.
It's a bizarre thing. I think. What's this?
It's like, as I say, it is the fact that it is a cheap knockoff. Well, not cheap knockoff. It's a cheap once-use, single-use fancy dress costume you might wear to a themed party, whereas people put a lot of effort into their thing, and the people who wear them probably think they look the dog's pajamas, but they don't. But as I say, it's a difficult one because, as I say, it is annoying, but I don't think there's anything you can do about it and still be fair to people. So,
Exactly. I think the worst one I've seen was because I've seen the Captain Mannering one a few times, and then there's
the other one I've seen is these rubber flying helmets you can get with goggles molded in. That you see those occasionally. Anything you can see if you type in World War II costume on eBay, and look what comes up. You tend to see a little smattering of the cheapest, nastiest stuff you can imagine. Do turn up at events on occasion, but
it's
something we have to live with, I think.
It's this one that's popped up.
Oh yeah, the plastic Tommy.
There's that one, and it's that costume comes with a jacket and these 2 fake Bren pouches.
Yeah, they're just on the jacket.
And I'm just like, what? And I've seen that one once before, and I was like,
as I say, for people who are going to a fancy dress party, fair enough. That's what they're for. That's what they're made for. But it's a bit odd when people wear them to a reenacting event.
Exactly. Just like something.
Because if I did that, I think I'd look a pillock, so I wouldn't do it. But
exactly.
But people do, so there we go.
I think everyone's own, I guess. Really, sometimes.
Well, yeah, to each their own. Yes.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Sort of want to go over any sort of projects you got sort of going, really.
Projects. Nothing major at the moment, because a lot of my kit I can't get to.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Problem.
grandparent. Is that your grandparents' house?
Yeah. That's a bit difficult. Obviously, I've got thanks to your assistance, I have the Ares SLR on the way, and I know before airsofters jump on me, I know it's not a great airsoft gun, but it looks very nice, and I only want it for its looks. I'm not an airsofter.
I think at the end of the day, it's the newest one. I think it's what we've got to do with.
Yeah, it's the aesthetic I was going for,
and it does let the part. I must say that a quick thing actually.
Yes, because you have yours there. Yeah.
Let me get onto it. When you get it, don't try to break it.
Oh right, okay.
There's you can. I think if King Arms eventually do bring theirs out, you can do it with theirs. But with the Ares one, there's a part up here. It's like a rod. It does break slightly, but then you have to unscrew the.
Oh, so the rod goes into the stock, does it?
Yeah. You can kind of break it.
Into the back of the. Yeah, I see.
And with the airsoft one as well, when doing that, you can flip the selector switch around to full auto. But apart from that, but you can, just about. But don't try to
it's an interesting thing with the SLR, and it's nice they've carried that across. Is not only does it not have the actual SLR, not the airsoft version. Not only does it not have the cam positions inside to fire full auto, so you obviously have to do some sneaky mods to make it fire full auto, but also the selector switch itself impacts the top cover. So when you try and rotate it round, you can't to that full auto position, which is a neat little so that's in semi-automatic, and as the lever points up, it actually impacts the side of the receiver, and you can't flip it all the way around, which I always thought was an interesting thing. Not only does it not have the positions, but they also made sure it was squatty proof. Couldn't rotate it all the way around.
I thought it was a nice little thing, especially when I first got it. I was like, oh, this is actually quite good, actually.
Yeah. As I say, once I'm going to treat the woodwork. Alan gave me some advice on that and the way he's treated woodwork, maintains woodwork on rifles. Obviously, it'll need staining down to make it a bit darker. And then he suggested boiled linseed oil as a treatment. So I'm going to have to go with that. So that'll hopefully make the woodwork look a little bit better. Give it a little light rub down, a stain, a bit of oil, and it should give it a nice sheen. Should look quite good.
Hopefully the woodwork keeps up. Because I've seen a few things, especially with games wise, woodwork that woodwork doesn't really stand up really. But as a display piece and as for reenactor, I would say probably perfect.
I'm considering over time picking up bits of the woodwork if and when I see to put original on, because you can. The other good thing with it, of course, is from my point of view, is reenacting Australian for Vietnam, and possibly New Zealand, and maybe getting some bits to make it look more like a C1. Because the foregrip and possibly a back sight and things, they're very expensive though. We'll see. I can make it look more like a C1 anyway. But the idea of it is it'll be convertible to do different things. So I could put an Australian carrying handle on it, for example. The green.
Isn't the C1 though? I think was it the first the C1A1? Isn't it? Doesn't it have? It's the ability it can charge a load.
You can, you can fit original top covers to the Ares rifle, so you could get a charge loading top cover and clip it on, and it because it does have a fully the bolt is the right shape. It doesn't if you put the top cover. Well, the cover in the case of it being an airsoft, obviously where you'd have to pull back to get up to the hop. That because it covers everything, you can put a charge loading top cover on, and it will work. Of course, the trial rifles, the British trial rifles, had a charge loading system as well.
Definitely, of course, and they just.
I think trying to make it I think trying to make it look like one of those would be difficult because you've got threaded end if you remove the flash hider, and you then don't have the bayonet lug on the barrel to replicate the FN.
I think on the Ares, the flash hider on these. I don't believe it's threaded. I believe it might be slightly threaded, but there's a small screw that goes into the bottom of it as well.
Well, I'll have to experiment when it arrives, because that would be an interesting. It wouldn't be perfect because you wouldn't have the lug under the barrel. But if you take the flash hider off without leaving a threaded end or anything underneath, that would, and a top cover with a charger guide, you'd have a relatively good stand-in for, I forget what the X number was now off the top of my head, for the experimental, which would be interesting because they were used quite extensively in Kenya. During Mau Mau. So that would be a nice thing to
and then an early Malaya as well.
Yes, yeah. But it would be nice to put together something like that for maybe a one-man's kit video or something. Yeah. Much as it would be a stand-in and it would be perfect, you could mention, I could mention what's wrong in the video and just talk about that, because obviously the bayonet lug. It's an interesting thing, just having the bayonet lug on the barrel and then obviously the bayonet just clipping over the end of the barrel and everything is quite a neat design of the FN. When it doesn't have a muzzle device, I think that's quite an interesting of the FAL rather. But is
it like a tension lock? Because if there's no lock.
So on some versions of the FAL, obviously our experimental version, the bayonet fits over a section of the end of the barrel. So there's like a slightly narrower section that takes the ring on the bayonet. Yeah. And then just further back along the barrel, the bayonet lug fixed. So it fixes a little bit like an SMLE bayonet, but instead of having the nub on the nose cap of the SMLE, that nub is the end of the barrel.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. So
the bayonet lug is just on the side of the barrel, and you just.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, the FAL. Some versions of the FAL that don't have a muzzle device, obviously you then have a tubular socket type bayonet that fits over the muzzle device if you have one.
I think I've got a similar one to like the Rhodesian style one on.
Shorty. Yeah, that's it. So that sort of muzzle device obviously takes the socket.
Yeah, and the lugs there, I believe. Yeah.
And obviously that also functions as a grenade. Has a grenade ring and so forth on it. Is that that's quite interesting. Who's that from? Is that a King Arms?
This is a I think it was JG. I think the company.
Oh yes, yeah.
I'm going to try and convert it into sort of a roadie sort of style.
Yeah, lengthen the barrel. Or...
I've got original SLR handguard. This fits on here fine. SLR, but it doesn't fit on my Aries for some reason properly.
Oh, that's strange.
The wood one should fit on the Aries fine, I believe, but the plastic ones are a bit of a tight fit. But yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, nice having the SLR hand grip on there. That looks good.
And I think this was one I got 2-3 years ago for like £10 in a box at Odyssey.
It's always the best way to get stuff like that if you can.
Exactly.
But it's interesting because I've been looking and I don't think anyone makes sort of a full length FAL. The ones that I think the ones King Arms made have a strange sort of flash hider design rather than just the end cap, which is rather than just the muzzle device you have on there. So it's a shame really. But
that was JG or Classic Arms or they're basically very, very similar group of them. I think they're still available. I think there's still quite a few. I must say with those ones, it's quite good. They do have a working bolt catch and release and everything as well on these ones as well, which is quite good. Bit of a when you on the cocking hand, there's a small screw, but that has sheared.
Right, okay.
But the bolt one that still works, so it still locks to the rear.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And the bolt release does work as well.
Oh, excellent.
Which is quite good. It's a nice little touch. It would have been nice if that was on the SLR, but can't have everything, I'm going to show you. No.
The only reason for getting the Aries is because it looks good. I'm particularly bothered about the functionality of it.
Exactly.
It's a prop for me because I can't. Well, it would be prohibitively expensive and less adaptable to buy a Deact. So.
Yeah, especially some of the places they're charging now is insane.
It is a shame, but it makes sense in what I do, and it makes sense to get something that can be converted for different uses.
Exactly.
So that'll be useful.
And also, it's especially with a SF one compared to say a Deac or something, a bit less. What's the word? Not disposable, but less likely to.
Oh yeah. You're less concerned taking it to.
That's it. That's the word I'm trying to look for. Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
But no, I thank you very much for your help with that again.
No, absolutely. You're very, very welcome. No, literally, because it was quite funny because we literally talked about it the day before.
And then it turned up on.
And literally on a group I'm with, us group just chatting. It's like, is anyone looking for Aries SLR with a woodcut added? I was like, yes, please. It's like immediately.
Brilliant.
So yeah, no, that was quite good, and the price was just I think perfect for it. Absolutely,
should be over tomorrow in theory. Should arrive tomorrow in theory. So hopefully.
Did he send it? Did he? I think he mentioned about making it two parts. I can't remember because
I don't think he did in the end. He just sent it Panzer Force 48. So should be here tomorrow in theory.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. That'd be brilliant. That's really good.
Is there anything else on your list I have to ask?
My list has now disappeared. Let's quickly bring it up quickly if I can find it. Oh, there we go. Cool. That just sort of just general chat about certain bits and pieces sort of what we're going over. I think I mentioned to you a while ago, but I don't know if you maybe got it, a certain book. If you can just about see it.
I'm getting a shine off the cover, unfortunately. I can see myself in it. My reflection on the webcam.
So, the conduct of anti-terrorist operations in Malaya.
You did mention it, yes. I haven't got a copy yet, but I plan to.
Yeah, I think I got mine off Amazon, if I remember. But yeah, it's an absolute because as what I found out from like reading up on and I was just listening to a audiobook which was called "Trying to Eat Soup with a Fork." It's a brilliant. It's about American operations in Vietnam compared to British operations in Malaya. It's a brilliant thing. It's and it focuses on military tactics of each of the Americans against the British, etc. It's absolutely brilliant. It's by an American author, and the audiobook is very, very good and goes over the training, and then it goes over the book as well, which is quite good, and it's fantastic. So it goes over like training for operations, about certain shooting cycles, fighting positions, etc. within and ambush positions within Malaya as well, and specifically it's because this is the third edition. This was 1958. I think the first edition was around 52, 54, something along that lines. But yeah, it's
essentially that it gives you a good rundown of the tactics used to outfox
they made thousands and thousands apparently of these. So according to what I've read, and generally given to guys before they went out to the theatre. Apparently, so. But no, it's a definitely pick up, especially for
a good read.
Yeah, a very, very good read.
Trying to eat soup with a fork sounds interesting as well. I like the idea of the comparison because I've always thought that was very interesting. Obviously, in some regards, you can't directly compare Vietnam and Malaya in the Malayan emergency in terms of the scope of the insurrection, the scope of the trying to find the right word, insurgency.
Yeah.
The scale of the insurgency was very different. The amount of support it had was very different, and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one to compare directly, but obviously on a kind of individual contact basis, the way ambushes and things were handled, and the way patrolling was carried out, and so forth, can be compared more directly. Exactly. So I'd be interested to have a look at, have a listen to or a read of that as well. So.
No, it's a very, very, very good listen to. I was just trying to find the actual. There we go. Yeah, learning to eat soup with a knife. Learning to eat soup with a knife.
Right. Okay. Excellent. I'll have a look for that.
The author is John A. Nagel, General Peter J. Shoemaker. Yeah, it's sort of a joint sort of thing. It's very, very good.
Yeah,
very, definitely worth a read. And he goes into sort of some statistics of the of different campaigns as well, like troop numbers, etc. as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And does like introductions to the British Army and the American Army as well during the period and the lead up to it as well.
Yeah,
it's very, very, I would say very extensive.
It's odd because if looking at sort of Europe, the doctrines, obviously in terms of armoured infantry and so forth, were becoming quite similar.
Yeah.
But then doctrines in other theatres seem to have been quite different, which is strange. It's an odd one.
It's good because it's interesting. It goes into sort of bits about like if in certain things, if the Americans had sort of taken on board some tips, Vietnam probably would have been a very, very different campaign. Most notably, especially with very, very much later in the Malayan campaign where things changed and leadership changed, obviously after assassinations, etc. That it sort of improved to the point of literally it was very, very effective with counterinsurgency, and I find that absolutely fascinating.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I think that can be seen by the different experience. The different reputation. I don't know quite how you'd phrase it, but certainly the Aussies had a different reputation to US troops.
Exactly. Yeah.
In the country, and I'm talking in generalizations here, obviously. and they'd learned obviously a lot of their jungle craft, shall we say, and their patrolling and ambushing and so forth had been learned during the Malayan emergency. And obviously there was a lot of learning in Borneo as well. So
exactly, because the Australians had a much more smaller operational area as well, I believe, in Vietnam. They could sort of focus more, a bit like sort of kind of how the British Army were in Helmand, in the Helmand province, of sort of try to keep it to a smaller area so they could focus on the local population more, I believe. So they could sort of put most of all their resources into a focused attempt, and then try and bleed it out, I think.
Well, I think this is it, isn't it? The classic point of counterinsurgency is separating the wheat from the chaff, as it were, and separating the people you're actually trying to get at from the population. Because if you don't do that, you're persecuting the population, which is obviously going to turn them against you, and you've got round to the hearts and minds issues, which are obviously central to, essentially central to a counterinsurgency operation. So it's having a high enough density of troops in an area to be able to effectively do that is necessary. Is a necessary factor in that, I would have thought. But I think we were aided somewhat in Malaya by the end, because there were quite a lot of defections and things, and obviously a lot of cash prizes awarded for men bringing in weapons and bringing in their leaders and things. So you really thinned out the ranks, which meant that by doing that, the proportion of security forces to terrorists in Malaya was quite significantly shifted over the course of the emergency. So that obviously helps us as well. Not only are you improving and refining techniques, you're also ending up with a situation where you have and you're training more of the local, the indigenous population, the home guard, and all of this, and the police field companies and so forth. You've not only increased the number of those forces, you're also whittling away the insurgent forces as well. So it's both things, I think, in terms of in Malaya it was helpful because both were sort of came to a head at the same time. In that late period, and they had a lid on it. Although obviously it did carry on after independence. Interestingly, the diehards did carry on. So I think
as you said, especially with also during the campaign, it was very say communism. I would say it was communism light. I would say more in Malaya than it was in Vietnam. Especially later on in the Vietnam campaign, it got very, very extremely fanatical, I would say. Obviously, it shows, as you said, with Malaya, with a lot of guys literally just handing in their leaders, etc., which I just find somewhat hilarious. And some of the circumstances it is that things happen is quite somewhat comical in a way.
Absolutely, well, as you say, it is almost. I mean, some of the things that happened in terms of bodyguards bringing in evidence. Should we say, by away body parts of their leaders to show that they'd dispatched them and to recover the money. Obviously, as well, the sort of the resurgence in the Malayan economy allowed that to be paid for. Rewards to be paid and so forth, which is it's a very dirty war, emergency. It's a very dirty war, and I think the offer of cash prizes to former terrorists and so forth was. Probably a cleaner solution than some of the other things that were going on. So, it's interesting all the different tactics that we used. Malaya is a fascinating example of counterinsurgency, and as I say, I think the biggest thing, or one of the biggest things, was obviously they carried on fighting after independence. So they didn't feel that. I think there was the argument made that the Tunku government after independence was kind of a puppet of the British. They made that argument, but carried on fighting for years and years and years after independence, when clearly, obviously, there wasn't the influence there. So I don't know. It's an odd one. They wanted a communist government in power and didn't get it, and so they carried on fighting. Is basically that. But yes, it is a fascinating thing. Jungle warfare in itself is very interesting as well. Problems inherent in fighting in jungles is something we learned obviously in the Second World War and put to good use. The lessons learned put to good use afterwards. So
because I always enjoy like your videos that you do on like Jungle Kick, especially when you've done your videos from when you did pre-show as well.
I blame Alan for the interesting jungle kit because he has an interesting jungle kit, and it is very interesting. And I think probably the reason it starts is the reason that it is very interesting is obviously during the Second World War. Obviously, there was the Lethbridge mission, and the development of essentially an entire jungle warfare set of equipment, right down to hair clippers, ballists, all designed for use in the continuing war in the Far East. And that in itself, I think the reason that attracted Alan, I think, is it's sort of a set of equipment. You can actually collect it all, and you have a full set of gear, 1944 pattern web equipment, the associated uniform, and everything that goes with it. And then that spins off into an interesting jungle warfare, because obviously that is kit that was then used post-war in all the jungle fighting during the Cold War. So, yeah,
I think it's one of those few sort of examples where you can sort of collect everything.
It's one of the very few, I'd say you can. And I think Alan's pretty much on the way to doing that. I believe he probably has most of the kit, even some of the obscure items like the camouflage version of the jungle uniform.
Right.
So yeah, it's an unusual thing. Yeah, the late war, what people refer to as the 1944 pattern, the late war jungle uniform was made in drill. With sort of rubber buttons in one version. It was made in the green come on, Simon, gabardine, green cotton gabardine, but it was also made in the same material as windproofs, so that camouflage material. Whether it was made in that material just because it is another form of gabardine, because it is gabardine cloth, it's windproof, and the idea, of course, of that is it's very tightly woven. It's essentially mozzie-proof was the idea. Whereas the drill uniform isn't, nor is AirTex, obviously. AirTex is about as un-mozzie-proof as you can get. But obviously we went back to AirTex after the war, which is an odd one. But it's not very breathable because it is windproof. So it's a balancing act, I guess.
Yeah, it's sort of like the process.
And obviously the idea of the helmet as well. So you can take you have a quick release liner. You can take the liner out of the helmet as a multi-purpose item. You can wash it and so forth. So it's all interesting. Even soap was introduced that was suitable for use in the tropics. So it's an interesting area.
And then sort of leading on from that as well, sort of as you said in one of your videos before, with bits not to get for your 37 kit.
A lot of people see
sort of
wartime dated.
Just because it's dated doesn't mean it was used.
Just because it was made during the war doesn't mean it was issued out in time.
Exactly.
We think the first troops to arrive in theatre arrived in Batasi, which is now, it's in Indonesia, at the time a Dutch colony, of course. And the first troops to arrive out there were Men of the Parachute Regiment, wearing with the new kit. And obviously they would maintain an affinity with the kit for quite a while afterwards. Obviously they wore 44 pattern in Suez, of course, as well. So it's an interesting thing that it sort of, obviously it was designed as theatre issue, but it then got used to some degree by the Gurkhas and the Paras. Both used it outside theatre as well. The web equipment certainly. But I think they're the first to actually arrive in theatre, and obviously they arrive after the cessation of hostilities. So it wasn't used during the war. The only time that we were actually thinking about this potentially for Victory Show, it wasn't used in theatre. It was used in training in the UK 45. So you do see men in denims using the new equipment in jungle war, training for war. So you do see it used during war. The webbing you see used during wartime, but not in a field role, in a training role, which is quite interesting. There are some photographs.
Oh wow!
Khaki Web has them, I think. There's one or two photographs on Khaki Web taken from an article. And I believe they're wearing denims and 44 pattern, and they're training in a mock jungle scenario, which is quite interesting.
Oh no, I think I have. I've seen, I think there's a couple of. I think it might be Royal Marines. I think some.
Possibly so. I mean, as I say,
it was on IWM. In the jungle warfare training, and I think it's very, very late war, and it's a bit of a mix of
bush hats. Yeah.
It's. I might have to. I'll do another search for them. They were quite good photos, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's something we considered doing for Victory Show this year, but that depends whether Victory Show's on or not, because obviously this is going to be the anniversary of VJ Day, not that long ahead of it, not that long before the event.
Yeah.
So it would be an interesting to look what if the war had continued in the men training for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
To be honest, it would also turn some heads, but it would be an interesting talking point as well. So
because you guys normally, I think you normally do Chindit operations.
We've done Chindit a few years running. We've done 14th Army as well. We tend to do jungle because the trees there, the woodland is just perfect for it. Although it's in September, it can be a bit cold sometimes and a bit wet, which wet is fine, obviously. That's quite appropriate, but it tends to be cold in Britain in September if it's wet. So jungle kit is not
season is fine.
but the jungle kit's not ideal, but the woodland is such a perfect backdrop for it. You don't often get that at events. You don't often. It's often a field with some trees at the side, trees at the edge. It's good being able to do something in a setting where you can with the jungle hammocks for Chindit in particular, it's a very easy display to do, but one that's very in keeping with the setting. It looks great.
Yeah, it's quite a dense woodland, isn't it?
It's something people don't know a lot about. So it's a nice thing to do. It's a very simple display to do, but very educational because it really is a good it's a good conversation starter.
Yeah, I think another in sort of more broader terms, it's sort of because otherwise, if you went to do that, say, the 14th Army does sort of remain sort of the forgotten army in a way because I think there's still that stigma. I believe. Well, a lot of people don't really.
It's like we were talking about earlier. It's not surprising when you think that they were referred to that at the time during the war.
Yeah.
As this was all going on, they were forgotten.
Yeah,
and it's not surprising then that down the line. The general public, at least, they're still forgotten because why? It's further away. It's a more distant memory. VA Day obviously is kind of in the national consciousness and is promoted nationally. Why, when VJ Day isn't, we don't remember it? And obviously, the only people who do are the people who are interested. So at least they do. At least they do.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
I think I'm trying to sort of build up a more sort of obviously with sort of the post-war Far East and jungle as well, but trying to move more into. I'm trying to move more into obviously wartime jungle kit as well. Like my great uncle was captured at the fall of Singapore, I want to sort of focus in sort of that sort of area.
Get some KDs and stuff together for early.
He was captured at the fall of Singapore in 42, and
what unit was he?
I honestly can't remember. I'll have to look it up again. He has a couple of paragraphs in Voices of the Second World War.
Right. Okay.
Which he's written in there. I'll try and find the book again somewhere. We've got a copy somewhere. He's got about 3 or 4 paragraphs in there in sort of separate bits. His name was his second name was Cliff. I think his first name was Clifford, as far as I remember. I've got to have another look again. I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
A couple of paragraphs, especially of near the end of the war and at the end of the war, because at the end of the war, when the Japanese found out that they'd surrendered, they got the entire camp to march around the square, constantly singing, and if they stopped, they were beaten.
Wow!
And it's quite, it's like the war's over, but it's just constant, disdain.
Oh yeah. It's well known. Unfortunately, the indoctrination which had gone on obviously led to the opinions the Japanese had on people, men who'd surrendered. It's a very difficult one that.
And he was, I think one of them he talks about, like he was a fairly fit man when he got captured, but he was fully bone, and it's dreadful. I think he only passed away early 2000s, so he lived a fairly long life, and
overcame the treatment he'd had and the knock to his health.
And I think that the comments he made in there, he made fairly early on, so he actually was sort of talking about it fairly on, which was sort of unusual, really, especially for the Far East. But it's extremely interesting. I want to get more
of the wartime jungle kit together.
Exactly.
Happy to advise on that, I'm sure. We can have a chat. I hope Pat Green's on. You can have a chat with Alan. Would be a good person to speak to as well.
Definitely will.
But finding stuff is not easy, but it is out there. The trousers from Soldier of Fortune that they're making now, their jungle green trousers, in terms of repro kit, are actually pretty good. I think I got mine from What Price Glory, I think. Yeah, you have to dye. You dye them green.
No, they're green. They're
Of
green.
course, we're talking about Singapore period, aren't we? So yeah, KD's. Although they're made to what you want for Singapore really is sort of your shorts, your Indian made shorts really.
Yeah, I think I've got a pair of KD shorts actually somewhere. I had to do a little bit of repair on them recently. They're sort of they're quite old repros actually, I believe. I can't remember. I think they're repros, but yeah, they're quite a nice pair. They're nice. Yeah, they're quite worn in, let's just say.
Yes,
so quite good. But no, I want sort of.
It'd be good if you found out what regiment he was in. You could find some photos of the regiment and see what they were equipped with. Because sometimes you see steel helmets, you see topies. You know, it could vary. So
yeah, no, I've definitely got to have another look up because it's been a while since I've read it, I've read these sort of bits. But it's quite a strange thing, especially at the end of the war. Just like why?
Yes. Why would they treat them that way when they fall over? Yeah.
Yeah, specifically notes that like they're using pick candles.
Yeah.
To hit them with. And I was like, Jesus, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. It's
yeah, definitely. Yeah. I just sort of really go over just general stuff. I'm
go on. Yeah, sorry.
I think I showed you this recently. So that's the jacket I put up recently.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
is that still for sale?
yes, it is. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's not for me. I've got boxes bulging with JG at the moment, so I don't have room for more at the moment. But
yeah, I'm trying to sort of gather sort of because I picked this one up and I was thinking about maybe expanding the collection because the place I picked this up has several from the same person actually. Several bush jackets. This was the only one which wasn't starched. There was a couple of them lock up and long sleeve and a couple of short sleeve ones, and with the shorts as well. So I was looking at possibly, but I was like, it's going to take a long time. It's a lot of money. I thought, yeah. But no, it's a lovely example, and I might think about keeping it in the end of the day. But it's especially with the insignia as well. It's a nice sort of set for Singapore. So Singapore, yeah, and with the attachment for the power wings as well for the studs.
Oh, you got the studs. Yeah, you can see the shape. Yeah. See the shape from.
Which I think is a nice little thing. So at some point, he was parachute qualified, so which is quite a nice little thing. I might have to look more in.
Get a set of wings together, put some studs on them, and
exactly. It's just to build up that, especially So I want to sort of expand on the jungle kit as much as I can. That's why I think
something interesting. Yeah,
they took the sort of jungle boots and that from a company in Australia.
Yes, they do make. They're good. Those repros. They are good.
Because it's a shame because there's not really. I don't think there's really any places in the UK that make reproductions. I believe.
No, I don't believe they're reproduced in the UK. But the ones from Australia are very, very good. We've seen them in the flesh, as it were, in the canvas, and they are very good. So I can highly recommend those.
Oh, definitely.
Good chatting, Jake. I'm afraid I'm going to have to make a move.
Absolutely,
so,
no worries.
Really good chatting to you, and we'll have to do this again sometime. But yes, we'll be heading out shortly as well. So I will chat to you later on in the afternoon.
No worries, absolutely no worries, mate. I really appreciate it, and
yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
It's been a good time.
Bye for now. Bye.
Okay, so I really hope you enjoyed that. I definitely did, and a real big thank you to Simon for taking time out of his day to sit down with me and have a chat. Really appreciate it, and him and his channel is one of the reasons why I do videos and help with my collection. So really appreciate that, and thank you very, very much. So if you like the video itself and everything, if you want to see some more content, please do so. If you want to like, comment, subscribe, whatever you want to do, that's up to you. I'm not gonna demand you to. Please don't think that. So really thank you. Also go over to Simon's channel as well. He's a plethora of knowledge, and his collections are fantastic. And he's got some new videos coming up soon as well, which looks really good. And I've got some videos coming up soon as well. So thank you very, very much, and goodbye.